Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation, a discussion with leading influencers, policymakers, and thought leaders shaping the economic future of the Bronx. Today is Tuesday, January 24th, and we are honored to have Councilmember Althea Stevens, the chair of the Youth Services Committee of the New York City Council and also co-chair of the Bronx delegation. The program will begin in roughly 3 minutes. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation. We will begin our program in approximately 1 minute. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation, a discussion with leading influencers, policymakers, and thought leaders shaping the economic future of the Bronx. Today, we are honored to have Councilmember Althea Stevens, chair of the Committee on Youth Services for the New York City Council, and also co-chair of the Bronx delegation for the New York City Council. Councilmember, welcome. We are honored to have you here today, and I'm about to turn it over to our President, Lisa Soren, to give some opening remarks. For those of you who are online, this is being recorded and it will be shared on all social media platforms. And I believe if our communications team is on target, this is also being broadcast on Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere else there is a metasphere of sorts. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our president, Lisa Soren. Lisa?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Councilwoman Althea Stevens. Thank you for all you do. Welcome to the Tuesday. These conversations have become pivotal for us here at the Chamber and for all our members and businesses listening in. I think just having these one-on-ones and having an opportunity to just have a real dialogue humanizes the political ideas that encompass our city and our borough. So I want to thank you for taking the time and having a chat with us this morning. What you're doing. Personally, I happen to think you are an outstanding council member. And yes, I'm putting my personal opinion out there. So it's just, I love to hear everything that you're doing. And I look forward to this conversation. So thank you.
Aw.
I
Love you
know,
so much,
Councilmember. So we like to preface these things by saying the safe space. We love Coffee and Conversation because it's informal conversations with our leading legislators and agency heads throughout the city and state of New York. So before we jump in, just a little bit about you from your bio, and it's a bit cryptid. But I know you personally, which is always a pleasure, right? But I think to Lisa's earlier point, I think one of the reasons why I don't want to say you're our favorite council member because it's budget season and we want to be aware of who favorite.
It's all right. Everybody, listen, I'm the council member's favorite council.
And I think Councilmember Stevens, there might be just an issue with your Wi-Fi, but just really quickly, Councilmember Stevens is a native of New York. She's a respected community advocate. She has over 15 years of working within nonprofit agencies and community centers. That's actually how and where I met the council member so many years ago. But at the heart of her kind of, I guess, rise was really working in and of and for communities on everything from organizing on voting rights, community celebrations, bridging relationships between residents, neighborhood partners, addressing gang policing, hosting annual youth forums, and has really committed her life to not just the Bronx and New York City, but specifically creating transformational change among our young people. So council member, we are so lucky to have you here this morning, and the residents and stakeholders of City Council District 16 are very lucky to have you as a representative. So just to give you an idea of how these things are usually framed out, we do some welcoming remarks, but then we turn the floor over to you to talk a little bit about what's on your mind, any issues, and then we have some, preset topics, but then we do a moderated Q&A with the folks who have been gathered on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also here in the Zoom chat, just to kind of guide conversation. And it's informal, and you're among friends and stakeholders, and we're just really happy and lucky to have you here this morning. So council member, talk a little bit about yourself and city council and all those amazing things.
Hello, could you guys hear me? Is it okay? Okay, great. First of all, at this point, I need to come on here once a week so that Michael Brady and Lisa can do the thing. And I'm so excited and honored to know both of them personally, because as much as they love me, I love them for all the work that they do and how active they are and all that they sacrifice to make sure that the Bronx is moving forward. So, the love is mutual. And, like Brady just said, before I even thought about being a council member, I was in the community just doing the work because that's what we should do. And I've always just been honored to do. And young people were the people who told me that I should run for office. They were the ones who said, get rid of me, because they were the ones like, man, always trying to get, how about
Council member, we're having a
combination of getting rid of me and hold on one second.
We have a little bit of a tech issue, I think, with your Wi-Fi.
Hold on 1 second. I apologize.
But you were on a roll and we loved it. So we apologize to our audience gathered here today for a bit of a technical difficulty. We're working through it right now, and we'll have the council member back and up and running shortly. In the meantime, please save the date for our future events. Check out the Bronx Chamber website, www.bronxchamber.org/events. We have exciting events planned for the remainder of the calendar year, and we are so thrilled to invite everyone here. And it looks like we have our council member back, looking beautiful as ever. Back over to you, council member.
I am sorry about the ghetto Wi-Fi. I don't know why it's not working, but we just gonna keep it moving. I'm sure everyone's had these tech issues before. But like I was saying, it's just been an honor of my life to be able to serve young people for so many number of years. And then having those same young people give me the courage and, encouragement and love to actually run. And just being able to be in this space now where I'm really trying to make sure that when we're thinking about policy, when we're thinking about budget acts and all those things, that we're keeping young people in mind, because it's so important for us to make sure that young people are getting involved in politics as young people. So that's really just been one of my main and hyper focused on, like, how are we getting young people engaged in government and local politics and understanding what it is. You'll be surprised how many people I encounter and they really don't know or understand what a council member does, because the reality is that's not something that's taught. Not in schools or anywhere. It's one of the things you kind of just learn and you pick up on. So I just think it's really great to be able to have that experience of, like, just kind of teaching the community and working and growing together. You're muted, Mr. Brady.
Absolutely. And I thank you for that. You think after 3 years of going on this, we learn how to unmute ourselves. But I think that you touch on something that I think is very near and dear to the Bronx Chamber's agenda, but also just citywide of, how do we better adapt businesses or organizational strategies to really focus on, engaging with young people, workforce development, but the totality of workforce development, right? So braided learning, apprenticeship programs, access to the innovation economy, in your experience, which I think trumps everybody that we have on the call, what recommendations would you say we should consider recommending to either large companies, small companies, to really start bridging that gap. That I think of it as being like it's a fictitious gap, but it's also very real. It's fictitious because we're not acknowledging that we're not activating our young people for better positions, but it's a very real gap that's separating a lot of our young people, and they're not given the opportunities to grow professionally. What would you recommend that the business owners who are on the call today, the agency stakeholders, some things that we could adopt in the short term and then long-term goals?
One, I think we have to first admit and come to terms with that we don't have workforce development in the city. Like, it's just non-existent. Even with the apprentice programs and things like that, we have programs that actually does not have the connections to the young people. So it's this huge disconnect where I feel like, especially one of the things that I've been really trying to do, especially in my offices, try to connect some of the dots where we have some of these great programs that struggling with recruitment, then we have these programs that have a lot of young people that struggling to get to these programs, right? So how are we connecting these dots? And also too, how are we being intentional about workforce development? What does that look like? We can't wait until someone comes in and fills the application. How are we actually going out there, finding young people, having them understand what's available? Because I think that's the other disconnect. Young people don't know what they don't know. So if I don't know that job exists, or I don't know that's something I can make money doing, how do I then pursue it? Like, we are not even exposing our young people to all the different things that they can do. So like, for prime example, right, when we think about cannabis, it just became legal and all these things. When you speak to young people, because we told them about sensories, right? We didn't tell them about the HVAC systems. We haven't told them about harvesting. We haven't told them about the chemistry behind it. We haven't told them about this, all these other jobs. So I think that it's really important that we get to a place where we're going out there and educating our young people. So even with the small businesses and even with different companies, I think it's going to be imperative that, like, you're going to high school for career days, you're actually going there, and even starting at middle school. We don't need to wait till they're in high school. How are we having internship programs where kids can come in and get some experience and get exposure to the different jobs and experiences? I think a lot of it is like, we need to do a better job at connecting the dots and also laying the foundations and exposing young people to more job and career opportunities so that they can go. We know that when young people are in school, they hear about being doctors, lawyers, judges, and the rigmarole, right? I remember I never wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted to work with young people. I didn't know that being a youth developer was a real job, right? Until I got out there, wasn't exposed to it. So it's about, how are we exposing our young people and really creating a pipeline of workforce development, because that just does not exist currently.
Can I jump in and play complete devil's advocate? And I know that
Absolutely.
I can challenge.
Let's spice up this Tuesday. Let's do it.
Ready. So here, as business, right? One of the biggest complaints, or rephrase, one of the biggest challenges that businesses are finding is the new generational mentality of the young people coming into the workplace, right? Let's take into mind the COVID, what we're doing now during COVID, or through COVID, remote learning became a thing. Did we lose her?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. So remote learning, remote work has become a thing, much more important for the young adults. But when we have had personally here at the office or with some other businesses, the challenge has been the qualifications these young adults are bringing to the table, right? The lack of writing abilities. And I had this conversation with quite a few professors, even at the college level. Technology has brought about a whole new change. And I consider myself extremely, extremely old school. Like, I wish I could go back to typewriter. So take this into context of how it's
Not me.
But there's challenges for businesses that feel that the young adults coming either out of high school or even college are not as prepared as they should be for office environments or communication skills, or having these one-on-one conversations that has made it extremely difficult to put young adults in a working environment, interacting with others. What do you say to that?
I think it's exactly what I said before. We have to acknowledge that we don't do workforce development. If you're coming out of college and you're coming out of high school having lack of skills, I think as much as the education system has to take some fault on it, so do the businesses. How are you like setting up these internships? What does your outreach look like? And also, are you being open to how things are changing, right? Like, I think in the same way that we want young people to come in and say like they're adapting to the workforce, I think some of the older businesses need to be adapting to some of the young things that young people are doing, right? Like there has to be a middle ground where folks have to understand, okay, they're going to bring some value to this, right? It might not be the way we've always done it, but let's be open about like what they actually bring to the table and being able to have these conversations and being able to say like, all right, so they might not have the best interpersonal skills, but maybe they're really good on social media and that's what we're lacking. So how are we using those skills to like boost our business and how are we like working together? But like, again, I think that there's this huge, in New York City, we have so many vacant jobs and so many people trying to find people. And then we have these high unemployment rates. To me, it's not making sense, right? So how are we really connecting the dots to say, this is the skills you have, and these are the jobs that we have to connect you to them. I think one of the things that I'm working really hard, especially this year, is going to be looking at like, how do we really have a robust workforce development programs, right? What does it look like for city agencies to be required to have interns in their office from high school and getting some college credits for it? How do we partner with some of these small businesses? One of the things that Councilmember Mia Men have been talking about is how do we use youth development and her being the chair of small businesses, working together to have some of these businesses take on some of our young people to do some of their social media and advertising and marketing and get some of those skills and do that as an internship program, right? So, you know, I think this year coming in, realizing that this just is not something that's ever been focused on in a real way, kind of connects those dots.
Thank you. See, I knew you would have the answer to this one.
I
So,
had the answer, but
and I'm a huge advocate, anything having to do with education, I just feel, you know, that new dream, let's look at the new school that just opened up in the South Bronx, right? The Dream School. When you walk into that location and you're looking at this space and you're looking at, you know, environment has a lot to do with it, right? How much you take on and want to learn. I wish we could multiply that school by 1,000 here in our borough, because I think that also has a lot to do with how seriously you take education. But switching over to the childcare initiative that has—
wait, I just wanted to give a plug because I just want to say D9, District 9 has some of the best principals and schools in New York City. We are one of the best kept secrets. I have to always shout out and support my principals because they are doing amazing work. And, you know, we only hear about the bad stuff or when negative things are going on in the Bronx about education. But D9, when I tell you I've worked in education for over 20 years, and these are some of the most committed and energetic and creative principals that I've met in my career, I want to make sure that we highlight that because yes, Dream is an amazing school. They're going to definitely bring some amazing things into the Bronx, especially even around the aesthetics. But I think that the work that's been going on here is one of those unkept secrets that no one ever talks about. And so I just wanted to make sure that I shouted them out because District 9 has been doing amazing work around preparing our kids and really pushing them forward.
And I think that's wonderful. And schools and principals should have more advocates like yourself, because I agree. We only hear the negative, and yet you have all these successes coming out of our schools and not enough kudos to go around. So I'm with you 100%. So as it relates to business and business development, and childcare plays a massive issue. So now that we have this universal childcare and business and merchant, what do you see coming out of that? Because personally, I wish that was available when my kids were young. I think that was my absolute biggest challenge as a single mom, was trying to figure out daycare while keeping a full-time job. So the fact that this is coming through, applaud to our elected officials. What does that look like to you now? And that's
no,
also
I think,
jobs.
well, I think it's going to be a huge victory in the sense of like, It'll give folks options. Like you said, when my daughter was young, it was a struggle trying to find like childcare and like finding someone you trust and
Right.
you want to leave your child with that many hours in a day when they're so young and impressionable. So I think it's going to be a real game changer. But I think that if we still don't do the work around like workforce development and giving people the skills that they need to actually be in these roles, then it's kind of going to still be null and void, right? I think that yes, childcare has been an issue and a hindrance, but we also have to make sure that we're preparing people for the job market as well. So, you know, how do we make sure that we're doing multiple things at once? Because I feel like sometimes we feel like we got to do this, but we also still need to be making sure that people have the skills and able to actually go out there and pursue these careers and pursue these jobs.
Totally agree. Mike?
So Lee, I was just going to say for the folks that are gathered, just to give you a point of reference, there's council legislation that has to do with childcare offerings. And that's also being complemented on the state side by a new initiative that was proposed by Governor Kathy Hochul to invest a serious amount of resources into childcare. So it is definitely, you know, something to keep an eye on. And I'd also extend an invitation to all of our attendees on social and also on Zoom. If you have a question, please put it into the chat box so we will have that moderated and keep that going. So, you know, council member, you had mentioned the cannabis economy and the internet cut out a little bit there. Because it is so new, and I think that I don't want to use the word misinformation, but maybe I think folks are almost set up for the okie doke at the front end because they don't understand all the components that are required to adhere to New York State cannabis law or New York City zoning principles. And I think a lot of young people, particularly, they want to get into the industry. They've seen what's happened, you know, with early crypto, although crypto is a bit of a mess right now, but they're seeing these things, even you know, folks who saw the rise of the internet, right? And folks don't want to lose that wave. What would you recommend from a business organization perspective, but also what would you recommend to our young people to ensure that they don't miss out and that they have the skill sets to really take advantage? I'm just using cannabis as one industry. It could be crypto, it could be, you know, Airbnb and flipping real estate on a small, like, but what would your recommendations be?
I think one, doing actual research and understanding the industry as a whole. Like I said, especially with like the cannabis, you hear so many young people who are like, I want to open a dispensary and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, there's so many other facets that you could be looking into. So one, I think taking the time to actually do the back research, understanding the industry, and then figuring out what part of that you want to be a part of, right? I think people are like, oh, well, this is all I know, so let me just jump right into this. But like understanding like, how do I fit into this bigger piece of the puzzle? Where can I use my skills to then be a part of this work? I used to tell my young people all the time when I used to do workforce development, figure out what you love to do first, and then figure out how to make money doing that, because it becomes so much easier. Whereas people often are like, I want to make money, so I'm going to do this so I can make money, and then figure out they hate doing it. I know so many people who like went to school and was like, I'm going to be a computer engineer, and then get to there and like, I hate this. Like, I don't even like math, right? And so that's because they didn't take the time to do their back research, really understand what it is, and then figure out the piece of what they wanted to do. If you love doing what you do, you'll never feel like you're working, and that's the best job ever, right? So like, I love waking up every day, being able to serve my community. So this doesn't feel like work. It just feels like I'm doing what my heart desires. So I'm able to like be entrusted in it and being able to go out and socializing and get things done. So I think it's going to be really important for people to really do their research. And if you really love doing it and you're really good at it, you'll make money doing it and not be so focused on the monetary. Yes, we need money, but you also want to be happy and be, you know, feel, you know, fulfilled when you're doing your job. So I would just say, really figure out what you want to do and how you can contribute to the bigger society.
That is an impactful statement because it is so true. Although everybody will have an opportunity to change their mind along. And it's funny that you use that as an example because I took computer technology back in the days, and I hate it, hence why I said I love typewriters. But who would have thought that I'd be in, engagement of businesses and small business, right? But interestingly enough, I always saw my dad have these small business, bodega, food truck, the whole. So there was always that level of entrepreneur and watching him struggle or succeed, right? So I guess it was embedded in me at some point throughout it all. Mike, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in for a second.
Absolutely, no,
Something
go for it.
totally different. We had a wonderful walk a few months back with you and Councilwoman Menon regarding walking through your corridor, looking at all the changes that are happening down by Jerome, and you have been very active in making sure that your businesses get services, and the Bronx Chamber is happy to do it, which is wonderful that this because again, this is all part of what you do, right? Training, education. We talk about college, we talk about, doctors, lawyers, but then the trades have become like all of a sudden everybody stopped doing trades, and technically now that's where the money is.
That's why you can't find a plumber. Let me tell you, plumbers are gonna make a lot of money because you can't find anybody to fix anything.
Exactly. And we're doing the same thing with auto repair, right? At the end of the day, auto repair is no longer just about a screwdriver. And please forgive me for anybody in the auto industry, because I'm assuming—
I don't think they use screwdrivers at the auto mechanic industry.
Whatever it is, the tools.
I don't think that's the tool they're using, but
okay. Well,
we're showing our lack of not knowing anything about auto mechanics. So
hence why I lease a car, because all I know how to do is I have 4 wheels, a steering wheel, and gas. That's as far
I barely know how to pump gas.
And that being said, right, your district has a lot of auto repair shops, and auto repair has become a technology haven as a up and coming new position. And we're trying to assist you as the chamber through your corridor to try to educate your businesses about the importance of merchant organizing and, what's going to happen to them. The rezoning in your district has taken effect. Things are changing. What do you envision for that corridor and the potential that comes out of there, both as jobs and loss of business, right? Because it'll be a combination of both.
Yeah, I mean, one, I just want to say kudos to my predecessor who did this amazing rezoning, and it's really something that's needed. And, as we all know, we need new housing and we need additional businesses there. And so now I get the luxury of kind of implementing that vision around how do we actually actualize the vision that she had and putting it into place. And so I think one of the things that we're really trying to do and push is how do we make sure that these businesses aren't just displaced and discarded, right? I think even using the analogy that we're using around how trades aren't looked at in the same way, we need trade skilled folks in order to function as a society. And they're just as valuable as any other industry, right? And so, I think it's important, us as a city, really making sure that we are thinking about where these auto mechanics are going to go. How do we make sure that they are going to be able to survive because they are needed and they're so instrumental? And how are we giving them support and tools that they need to not only just thrive, but to grow, right? So I think for so long, they've kind of just been left there to their own devices. But I think in the same way we look at the cannabis industry, or we look at, some of the trade programs that folks are starting up and things like that, and apprenticeships, how are we making sure that we're doing the same for the auto mechanics, right? So it's been really great to be working in partnership with Councilmember Sanchez, who also is a part of the Jerome Ree Avenue districting, and holding folks accountable, because there was a lot of things put in the rezoning that was put in place as a safeguard to protect this industry. And so how are we making sure that the city is living up to those expectations, the agencies are living up to those expectations, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And also too, thinking about how are we working in partnership with some of the new schools, and talking about, really helping even some of the older mechanics get some of the newer skills for like some of the newer cars that's coming out and the electric cars, so that they can also stay up to date and they don't become obsolete with the skills that they have.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. And I think that, you know, when we talk about workforce development in New York City, like we have to go to, you know, almost a baseline of what workforce development is and then grow it from there, you know, because there are basic industries, whether it's mechanics, plumbers, electricians, that are ingrained, but they're a slimming pool, right? You know, maybe, yeah, and I'm just pulling numbers out of the sky here, but you know, maybe there were 10,000 of them last year, and now we're down to 8,000, and we're not seeing the uptick because of the training programs aren't there. But even further on the training programs, I think you raise a really good point of, are they training programs for yesterday, or are they training programs for today, or are they training programs for tomorrow?
And also, I think when we even think about the education system, think about it, everything is like college prep, college ready, right? Like it has been this thing where it's like having a trade skill isn't seen as professional, or being blue collared is looking as less than, and like you have to go to college, where it's like, no. It is dignity being a plumber. There's dignity in being a mechanic. Like there's dignity in being an electrician. Like those are skills that most of us can't even do. Or like can't build anything, right?
Right.
And so, but that has not been the language that's been used. That's like, wait, you're really handy, you're good with your hands, let's figure out a trade. Like you can build these things. How you can be a business owner, right? Like a lot of our businesses started out because of trade skills that people had and was able to offer to others, but that's not been the connection, right? It's been like, no, you need to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're not going to get a career, you're not going to be able to get a job, and da-da-da-da. Like that is the rhetoric that's been told to us for so long. I remember going, when I was graduating college, which was like 100 years ago, I remember like the joke was like, oh, you didn't get into college, you're going to go to Zara. Ain't nothing wrong with Zara. You know, like skills on like how to mechanic and refrigerator repairs and all these things, and HVAC system, and like, but that was the running joke because that is what was like kind of embedded in us, like you had to go to college, right? And here's the thing, I know people who got trade skills, I'm in debt, they not. Like I'm fucking dead. They went, got their trade, started their business, and make more money than me. So, you know, there's definitely dignity in that. And we have to start using that language and getting our kids excited about it, because we have a lot of kids who are so skilled in so many things, like whether it's like taking apart a computer, building things, but we don't encourage it. We say, you got to go to college. And it's like, yes, you can go to college. And if that's your path, you can, but there's other paths to success that we need to start talking about.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, like if my carburetor is broken, I'm not calling a brain surgeon, right? I'm calling a mechanic. You know, and I think that I think the word dignity is something that is, you know, we need to start ingraining, because it is dignified to be a plumber. It is dignified to be an HVAC installer, and also for those who are listening, it's a great also access point and entry point to wealth. I've personally hired an HVAC guy, and they took my money handedly. So just, you know, pivoting a little bit, because you had mentioned the word accountability, and I think that's a big thing. And also, you know, I have to tip my hat to you because you keep folks accountable, whether it is a city agency, the mayor's office, folks in Albany, business organizations, like you have no difficulty keeping folks accountable. And I think that's a really, really big testament to your leadership. As we go into Jerome Avenue, the rezoning that was done there, and the community plans that are coming out about it, I know the chamber is working with your office on some of the elements around merchant organizing, but what are some things that you are, if you had your top 3 items that, you know, you really wanted to keep folks accountable for, to kind of make sure that this can be used as like a hallmark plan in neighborhoods after Jerome Avenue? What would be those 3, you know, 2 or 3 things that you'd say, okay, this is my target, this is my focus?
I think one of the major focuses is kind of just starting with this holding people accountable, right? I think when there was a changing of leadership, I don't think they thought out that me and the new council member, Sanchez, might have been asleep at the wheel, but we were not. And we pay attention to detail. And I think the level of detail that both of us are in, where we're like, wait, there was money put in for this. How was it spent? I need an itemized list. I need to see it, And just really trying to say like, okay, so then if that didn't work, where did it shift? Where did it go? Details, and we are both in the details and in the weeds of things. So just kind of making sure that all the things that we were promised are actually actualized, right? Like I said, my predecessor worked really hard to not only get commitments and promises, but also getting money attached to those things, right? Which was a really big deal. And so it's like, where did the money go? How do we spend it? And like, and if there's anything left, how do we move forward, right? So a lot of it is just trying to like hold things accountable. And also too, right, we have to take into account did happen. So thinking about with those shifts and things that had to be moved around, how do we move forward now? And what does that look like? So being open to the vision changing, right? Saying like, yes, this made sense then, but post-COVID, well, we're still in COVID era. Then shift in those like saying
We're just having a little tech issue with your Wi-Fi.
Oh, what's the last thing you heard? I'm sorry.
Holding people accountable, and then it got choppy.
Yeah, pretty much folks accountable and making sure that all of the promises and commitments that were made are
Councilmember, as much as we love to view you, it might help your Wi-Fi if your camera's off. Possibly.
okay. Is that helpful?
Sometimes it is.
Could you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
So, Councilwoman, can you hear me? Councilmember Stevens? I think we lost her.
We may have. While we're waiting for the council member to come online, Lisa, there was actually a message in the chat for the chamber. So maybe we can address that, and then we can dovetail it in with the council member once she's able to rejoin. A new chamber member, Bob Glasser. Oh, the council member's here. Okay, excellent. Well, council member, we're just going to go into the chat box and bring up a question that I think you and Lisa might be able to tag team about how do we foster more of a connection between our local council member's office and candidates that may be looking to connect with the business community either for work or things of that sort. So this comes from Bob Glasser. He's the CEO of ENT and Allergy Associates here in the Bronx. And he was wondering, how can we go about connecting potential candidates for jobs and those jobs? And is there a way to further engage with the council member's office or more generally the city council to make sure those job offerings are publicized and that, you know, we're actually doing local hire and local recruitment?
Well, someone from if my staff can put the office information in there.
We lost her again.
Lisa, do you want to tag team a little bit about what chamber programs there are?
Well, we tend to, here we've been trying to develop a sort of like a Dropbox of applications when they become available. And we encourage our members to be able to let us know when they do have jobs available. I will say that there seems to be a disconnect, a real disconnect as to the overall borough's opportunities that are available and a collective way of gathering that data, right? So I think that it's super important that moving forward, the conversation be had about, is there a one-stop shop of where businesses in our borough can put out jobs that are available and schools, high schools, and others can put applications of people looking for it. I think that's one big miss that we have here, and we don't have the solution, right? We can do it on our end to the best of our ability with our members and our college members, right? So there's that mixed mingle. But to the councilwoman's point, there's a lot of conversation, but I don't know that there's this one area where collectively we can all get that information. And if somebody
Well,
has a solution.
I will say, my office, we do, if jobs, offers or things like that, you can always send them to our office. We send it out in an e-blast. Like I said, we had a job fair, a couple of weeks ago, where we had over 35 vendors and 200 people show up. We're going to continue to do that on all of my social media, my LinkedIn. As we get jobs in, we post it there. So people kind of know that we are a hub in those things, but we're definitely trying to connect folks to the services. We can also send out those job descriptions to other council members throughout the city, who also have been pushing out a lot of the job announcements that they've been getting.
And as a co-chair of the delegation for the Bronx delegation, I think that would probably be a phenomenal way. And if we can access that, so collectively we can pull the information from all our city council members, you, yourself, and Councilman Dinowitz can help guide that. And I saw somebody put about BOEDC, they have helped, the Department of Labor is in their offices, and there has been some help. Respectfully, Department of Labor can sometimes be challenging in of themselves, but definitely is a resource, without a doubt is a resource. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute because I know we have about 15 minutes and there's questions to be asked, but this one is totally off topic to some degree. Yesterday, SBS announced a $75 million for our small businesses, loans 4%. With they've dropped a lot of the criteria that have stopped our businesses, especially here in the Bronx, from being able to access this money. Now, one question that keeps coming up over and over again, and I have yet to have a real thorough conversation with the city on this one, is how, or is there a way to make sure that the Bronx doesn't get screwed again from like happened in previous times, where there is a fair share of opportunities for our Bronx businesses to apply and get some of this funding. Now, I know a lot of it has to do with marketing and getting the information out, which is something we learned the first time around. But I'm wondering, as city council members and as a delegation for our borough, is there, or would you think there should be a conversation about making sure that our borough doesn't get left behind again?
No, I to be honest, I think that is a really good point that you bring up, and I'm sure that me and the delegation would be happy to work with, the chambers to start these conversations around like, what does equity look like for the Bronx? Because that is something we talk about all the time, where we often are left out of these conversations, and then like an afterthought, like, oh, the Bronx. And the beauty is we have a very fierce delegation right now where we don't play, and we're like, nah, you're not doing that. We're going to be a part of this conversation, and we're always talking about equity. So I am very positive that, we should set up some time with you, with the delegation, to talk about how do we make sure that this is a much more equitable distribution, and like not having the excuse of saying like, well, outreach and marketing, so how are you information that they need the same way you are?
Agreed. Thank you.
And I do have to say, and this is kudos to Lisa and the comms team, within minutes, the notification went out to like all chamber members in our constant contact list of general communications about the fund yesterday, and our small business resource network team are now actively using that as a tool for Bronx businesses. So tip the hat to the chamber team on getting that comms out so quickly. And just to circle back on jobs, because I see there's a lot of comments in the chat box. Also, if you are a chamber member, you have a MIC profile. which is like a special portal. If you have job postings that you would like to share, you can post them in the MIC portal, and then they are shared to the chamber community. It's another chamber amenity that I think some members could really take advantage of. I know that most recently Metro Optics posted a position, or is working with Chanel and our team to have positions posted. But if you have positions that are open within your firm, you can upload them to the MIC portal, and they can be shared to the larger Bronx community and New York City community. So Councilmember, because we have about 14 minutes left, in terms of large scale development projects or projects of interest, both that will be thought of, conceived of, completed, planned for in your tenure as a council, what are one or two of the projects that excite you most?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, right? Especially with the redistricting, I picked up all of High Bridge now, and we're in the process of getting a new community center there. So I'm excited to be able to champion that and make sure that that happens, especially with my background in working in community centers for a number of years and understanding the importance of them and understanding how much this community would be able to use it and in need of it. So I'm really excited that I'll be able to work on this project and see it come to fruition. Actually, which is interesting, is I was part of the NAC that advocated for this during the Close Rikers Island campaign to get this community center in this community. So to think about, this is how I started some of my introduction into politics and getting into this work, is one of the projects that is going to happen during my tenure that I'm really excited about and really amazed about. So that's one of the things I'm probably most excited and proud about. Another thing that I'm trying to work on, and hopefully we'll be able to see this also into fruition, Taft High School is in my district, and it has a football field that has had no investments. And so this is going to be one of the things I'm definitely going to be trying to champion and get investments in, because especially when we're thinking about it at the top of the conversation, we're talking about like Dream coming into the community and having this beautiful facility. One of my big things is like, how are we investing in our school environments? And Taft is one of those campuses that is the home of, I think, about 7 schools, high schools and middle schools, and they deserve to have a field that is beautiful and it's invested in, and making sure that, we're able to use it. And it would benefit so many young people, not only in the school, but in the community, right? And so, looking at that of like, how do we make sure that we get funding into that project? And then all my schools, right? Like, I've been really pushing around my principals around when they're requesting capital funds, like, what does that look like? We need to beautify our schools, and we need to make sure that they're up to those standards. So working with all 55 of my schools across the district to kind of really help with upgrading and really beautifying them. And so those are things I'm probably most excited about.
That's fantastic and really good stuff. And so we're going to go to the chat box here. You are getting a lot of love from Miss Jones and the resources that you've deployed over by Elliott Place and Jerome Avenue. She gives you a big shout out for all of the resources over there. So thank you, Miss Jones.
Thank you, Miss Jones. We love you too.
The next question comes from Anthony Jordan with SOBRO, the South Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. Anthony writes, how are we or the council encouraging the trade unions to help bring more opportunities such as apprenticeships to the overall workforce development plan in order to bridge the wide gap in our communities?
Yeah, I mean, I have a really good relationship with a lot of the unions and trade unions, and even at our job fair that we had, the carpenters union was there. They were so excited because they actually met a number of people that they were like, no, we're employing them. One of the gentlemen called me and was like, yeah, I found my mentor. I already told him that I'm going to make sure you get through the program. And so we've been working really closely with a lot of the unions. Local 79, we've worked with them, the bricklayers, all of them have been really supportive and like coming out anytime we need them. And also just coming to any event. So when we've had like, not just our job fair, when we were at like school fairs and things like that, they're always like, hey, can we come out? Could we table? Could we recruit? So we've been working really closely with a lot of our trade unions as they've been really wanting to recruit from the district specifically.
Excellent. And I think that the trades are really important, particularly as we have so many construction projects happening throughout the Bronx and so many redevelopment plans, like to ensure that we hire local and really open up those possibilities that, where you're not just waving a flag, but like you become a foreman or things that open up the economic opportunity. I think that's really ripe for investment. And Councilmember, I know it might be a little too early in terms of planning, but I know that traditionally the delegation gets together or the Borough President's Office gets together, and there are multiple career fairs or job fairs that come up in the spring or sometimes over the summer. Do you have any hints on anything that might be percolating from the delegation or from your office, or anything that might be planned out that some of our stakeholders might be able to engage with?
Yeah, I know my staff put the information in already. Like I said, we had a job fair. It was literally, I believe, like a month ago. We're definitely going to be having another one in the spring. And we're going to be doing a youth job fair too. Hopefully maybe in May or June, specifically targeting young people, because, we've had a lot of young people who said they haven't been able to camp season. We know that it's been a struggle to get a lot of folks hired for camps and stuff like that. And so we're gonna have another one specifically around like youth jobs and getting young people employed for the summer in collaboration with like SYEP and all of those things. So we're gonna be doing those in addition to having just regular job fairs as well. And if folks have questions or want to be a part of it, please feel free to reach out to our office, and we'll definitely take your information and get back to you as we're planning those. And if folks want to collaborate with us to do a smaller one or anything like that, we're absolutely open and willing and excited to always partner.
Awesome. And then we tend to close out the program by asking one question, and some people get stumped on it, some people are really excited about it, but we try to leave on a high point of, what are you most hopeful about for the Bronx and New York City?
Well, what I'm most hopeful for, I think starting with the Bronx, I'm blessed and honored to have so many amazing coworkers and colleagues at the city and state level. I think one of the things that the Bronx has always had for them is how well we all get along and work together. So I think really for us, being the Bronx delegation's co-chair and working with Councilmember Dinowitz, we've really been trying to focus more around what does goals look like for the Bronx and how are we working towards them as a collective? So much of our work is like hyper focused on our district, but also trying to switch the mindset of like, how are we moving forward in the Bronx and what are we doing to push together an agenda? Just trying to have similar goals and outcomes and just working together. So I am most hopeful for us actually developing our goals and then achieving our goals, right? I think, one of the issues is like, how are we measuring our success? What are we looking at? And I love that this is one of the things that I bring because I come from the nonprofit world. That's all we ever do, right? Like we're like, well, strategic planning, what are our goals? How do we set up for the next 5 years? And so coming in with that mindset set and working with the delegation and them actually trusting Councilmember Dinowitz and myself with kind of like helping to develop those things. So I'm most hopeful for that. I'm also really hopeful of like continuing our partnership with our state colleagues. That's the other beautiful thing, right? We had our first city and state meeting this year where both city council and state electeds came together and talked about what are our goals, right? So those things to me are just always like really beautiful and really nice to see when you have like-minded people coming together, working to really push the Bronx forward. And for the city just in general, not to toot my own horn, I love that I'm in council because I think I bring a perspective of like, how are we bringing young people to this conversation? And one of the things that I've found is obviously I have an infectious personality because so many more of my colleagues are speaking the language that I came and speaking of like, how does this impact young people? How do we make sure that this is happening we spoke to young people. Are we gonna bring them in to have an opinion or bring to the conversation? So that's actually been really beautiful to see folded into the government and local politics in a very different way. And I'm happy to be a part of that and excited to really see the beauty of what's gonna come out of that. Hello?
Yeah, we hear you perfectly.
Oh, that's
You have us
awesome.
in total silence and awe of your conversation.
I was like, wait, did I freeze again? This is ghetto Wi-Fi?
No, that's when you know you're doing a great job, when you have everybody truly listening.
No, it's been great to talk with you guys. I'm so happy and excited that you guys even invited me on. So, it's just always a pleasure to be with two of my favorite people. So
And the feeling is definitely mutual. I think it's important. To your point, I think this is the most cohesive city council we have had in a very long time for our borough, which makes our lives easier and the accountability back and information back to our members, which is so direly needed. So we thank you, honestly, putting aside the fact that I happen to think you're awesome. Really, you are doing great work. Both for our youth, especially for our youth, which means so much, but keeping the conversation going with the delegation to us. And ideally, I'd love to be able to see the delegations, come and we have like a breakfast and just have a conversation and watch you guys in action, and giving our members an opportunity just to have that type of roundtable with you.
let's do it. Let's set it up for after
Yeah, I
budget
think
season.
it's wonderful, but I really personally and professionally want to thank you for all that you do. Thank you for always keeping the line of communication open and for your amazing transparency. So on behalf of the chamber, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for this conversation this morning.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you everyone for bearing with me and my Wi-Fi. I'm literally hopping off this call to try to go get it fixed because I don't know what's happening. So, but thank you guys for bearing with me and I appreciate you. And I hope that I continue to make you all proud and do the work of the people.
Councilmember, it's been such a delight to have you today, and we look forward to our continued partnership. For the folks that are gathered online, this will also be available on the Bronx Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel, the New Bronx Chamber of Commerce, also shared over social media using @the_new_BXCC. Additionally, everyone who registered today, this will be embedded in your thank you email. Please be on the lookout for new and exciting events that the Bronx Chamber offers by going to www.bronxchamber.org/events, including our February 15th networking event, and a host of other really exciting events, from golf on June 20th to the Bronx Game Changers Nights with the New York Yankees on April 4th.
And the Women's History Month,
That's
celebrating
right.
our young ladies, March 31st.
And Lisa, on that, for women of distinction, just so folks on where can they receive more information about that?
Absolutely. So to register, sponsor, or just general information at foundation@bronxchamber.org.
Awesome.
Foundation@bronxchamber.org, or everything you need will be through that email.
Fantastic. So again, we thank everyone gathered today. We really appreciate you bearing with us as we got through some tech challenges, but welcome to 2023. Please be on the lookout for our Coffee and Conversations, a conversation with leading influencers, policymakers, and thought leaders shaping the economic future of the Bronx and New York City. We thank everyone for giving their time today, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.